So a matrix. Let me stop, make sure everybody's with us as far as what is a matrix.
A matrix is a set of thoughts that cause beliefs that create values when you repeat the beliefs enough that you begin to identify with based on your subjective experience in every conceivable way you want to categorize it.
Okay. Okay. Did you get that? Give him a certificate.
Thank you, Rick. When you seem to use a lot of the words sort of back and forth, matrix, frames, and metastates, somehow I want, as I was saying in the group, for outcome, by the end of this I'd like to understand the relationship between those. I understand, I like when you say matrix, you built that around it, but are frames like subsets of it, or metastates? Okay. Where's the pictures that I can see?
So
to see relationships.
It's really a good question, and the answer is probably not the one you want to hear. The answer is that all of these are synonyms. Synonyms. They're just different ways of looking at the same thing.
But one's not bigger than the other? A matrix is not... No?
This is where...
It's not linear.
It's not linear. So one of the things we have to do is really shift to nonlinear thinking. And when Robert Dilts created the first logical level system in NLP, he really did us a great service, but he made it hierarchical and linear. Could you have... So he had beliefs, and then he had identity, then he had mission. Could you have beliefs about mission? Could you have an identity about your beliefs, about your mission? Could you have an intention? Could you have a memory? Could you have imagination? So there's no level that's higher than any other. It's not hierarchical. It's not linear. All of these are synonyms. They're just different ways, and that's why we use the diagram of the diamond. They're just different facets of the same thing. So page 12, that diagram of the diamond. And if you look at all these different words, these are just everyday common words. And yet we try to use them to describe some of the mental architecture in the head. Well, I've got a memory. Well, what do you believe about that memory? How do you represent that memory? What do you call that? What do you think and feel about that memory? And you got that memory, is that also an anticipation, an imagination of what will happen? No.
That seems a little different for me in the sense that you're taking one level, you have a thought or you have an experience that happened, and then you're layering it with these thoughts about until it gets so big that you're paranoid or you create something altogether different. So is there something that could show how that's different? Or
so
I'm trying to make meaning here.
the main program of how we process either sequentially or randomly, those of us who are sequential, being a CPA, I'm very sequential. And so I have to go to the other end and allow myself, give myself permission to be random with this process, because I like it. I love that. I love the way the diagram shows all that hierarchy there. But but I've begun to break away from that. And I like the way you put that. These are synonyms. In other words, they're all ways to enter. I wanted to ask people, what does that mean to you, and then what does that mean to you? And then when I got stuck and we were stopped, it's like, darn, we can't. I was hoping they'd go to here, but if we jump out and try and go in at these other levels, how is that important? How does that affect your identity? Then you keep going.
Right. So while we can make specific distinctions between metastates and beliefs or frames in each of these words, if you think of them as synonyms and as just different words that people have invented over the years to describe some of this mental architecture, I think that would be at least a beginning place of entering into it.
Are there some tips to learning in a more non-linear way? Because I guess I fall back on that.
For those of you who've been through NLP training, you've learned it, for the most part, in a linear way. And so what we're now doing is saying, given all of that, we're not going to discount any of that. It doesn't make that wrong or anything. It's just that we're now taking it to another level and letting it start to merge. And so this is where a good state of confusion and disorientation today will bring forth that systemic nonlinearity tomorrow. And of course, what we're trying to do, as you've seen, I've started with this global picture, and I'm not giving you many of the details yet. I think the details will come out when we do the processes. And I think you'll find your way, because the most confusing thing, the next confusing question will be, how do you know where to go next? What Stacy just brought up. And the answer is, follow the energy of the client. Follow the energy of the person you're talking to. They will give it to you. But you have to have ears to hear what words are they using, and I'll just use their words to enter into their matrix. And so this will be different. Instead of us teaching them our vocabulary, we just listen to them knowing that these are just different words for the same thing. Brian?
Just to help, maybe a little on the understanding part. So my thinking is this, okay, you have an experience or an event, and it can be words, it could be a dialogue, a conversation, or some other thing. You attach meaning to that, and that becomes a meaning. From that meaning, you may then decide to frame a mental picture about that. And that could then be a self-view or a world-view about how the world works, or how I work, or what I believe about myself. And these frames could kind of then be sort of so habitual, or enough of them, they sort of form a matrix of repeated thinking about a worldview and a self-view, out of which now I operate, which might be somewhat true or false, or a combination of some things true or false. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
So it is this layerness and this the swirling. Harrison? Okay.
I wanted to give an example of a friend of mine who, from a very young age, he was praised for his intelligence and his maturity that was exceptional for his age. From his family members, everyone said he's going to, go somewhere, he's going to be something. And he felt good about that, and then began to believe that he is more intelligent than most people his age. And then that's a belief now that he holds. And then how that sort of permeated his life was, in the way he treated people that are younger than him. So now he's condescending to everyone that's younger than him, and it affects his general relationships. And he doesn't have very many friends that are younger than him, and he spends most of his time with people that are in their 30s, 40s, 10, 20 years older. And it's just a belief, and now it's real to him, even though, it's not necessarily real.
Yeah. So let me add one more piece that I hope will bring some significance to this. We start off, there's a cone head. We start off in a state in response to whatever we respond, and then how we make meaning, and we'll get to this tomorrow as we start identifying the meaning-making matrix. We make meaning in about 8 or 9 ways. Of course, one way is through representing it on the screen of our mind. Then we call it something. We add labels to it, so linguistically. Then we bring emotions to it. That's really the metastates part. We feel about it, something. We may associate memories, imaginations with it. We may create a metaphor and describe what is like. Or in all these other 26 ways, frame it in some way. And in framing it, we're evaluating it as to good for me, bad for me, important for me, not important for me. We're evaluating it. And so we can set it out in that kind of a linear way. But how it actually operates is more like the whirlwind of the mind. So I like using a spiraling kind of motion like a tornado or a whirlwind, because as Brian said, sometimes we first have a feeling about it, then we create a movie about the emotion, and so this is not in any particular order. but it's the whirlwind of the mind of how we construct meaning. And it's, so if you think about the brain not going linear, if you think about the brain going around and round, everybody knows that one? You go round and around, and sometimes about the 15th round you say, you know, I've thought about this before. You know, stop, let me get off. But the brain goes in circles more than it. That's why mathematics and linear things are difficult to learn, because it's not the natural way we think. We go around in circles. Now, what circles you go around in, what spirals you spiral around in, will be more of your history and how you've been taught. You know, think about this and think about that and think about this, and you may have two loops in your 2 points in your spiral, or you may have 15 going around. And some of us have spirals that always go up, and it gets better and better and more positive. And then some people have spirals that when you start thinking, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Those are the people who can become afraid of thinking. And they'll say things. If you start talking to them, especially about any kind of philosophical depth, they'll go, you know, you think too much. Because the way their brain goes, once they start thinking, it just gets worse and worse. Our brains go in circles or spirals more than linear. And what we want to do in understanding and catching and detecting our own matrix is to watch, where does our brain go, and is it a virtuous spiral, or is it a vicious spiral? And of course, this is part of systems thinking. In systems thinking, we talk about spirals and feedback that amplifies or that dampens. Now, I'm doing this as if it's in this kind of, but actually it's more like this. It's more vertical, because I take feedback from you. I watch Richard here, and Richard gives me a frown or scowl, so I bring that in, represent that, and then I fed back his information, but then I feed back to myself what that must mean to me. Is he disagreeing? I don't want him to disagree. And if he disagrees, what will that mean? And who will I be? And what do I feel about that? And what does that mean about my future? And what do I need to do, my intention? And how important is this? So I feed back, and as I feed back, then I'm going to feed it forward inside myself. So to understand your matrix, and this is a good time to bring this up, there's feedback, that's information. Then there's feed forward. Feed forward is energy, which comes out as emotion, feeling, speech, and behavior. So feedback is information. What that information, what that message, what those signals do to me is to activate my neurology. So I feel, and I sense, and I'm going into states, and it comes out as speech and behavior. So the spiraling, feedback, feed forward. Now, if that spiral is a negative spiral, it just gets worse and worse, what comes out? If I come in and it's positive, here's some information that's important information. I must not have been clear. Let me seek to make myself more clear, and this is an opportunity. I'm going to learn something. And then what comes out? So thinking systemically, as we interact with each other, and we watch for how information comes in, what information comes in, and then how a person gives information to themselves about it, and then what states they go into. So we calibrate to their states, and then we calibrate to their expressions. So that as we get working, and today we're going to do some detection of the matrix exercises, you'll see a matrix in action. As information, as you provide information with just a question or a statement, and a person starts processing it and then responding out. So while we can make it kind of linear in one way, just to sort out the pieces, it operates very dynamically and in a fluid way. So some of you yesterday saw some tornadoes, or saw the beginnings of some tornadoes here in Denver. If you ever seen a water eddy going round and round, it looks like there's structure. And yet, if you tried to grab it, there's really nothing to grab because it's not static structure, it's dynamic structure. It's movement. And I think that's a good metaphor for how our mind-body-motion system works, is dynamic structure. Which means something else about it is that as you enter into someone's matrix with them, just asking a question, making a statement, just being present to them, you're affecting that structure. So change is easy. We cannot not change. It's just a question of, is the change going in a more positive direction or a negative direction? And what do I need to do to facilitate it moving in such a way that's really going to bring the best transformation for the person or for myself? Okay.
Michael, it seems to me that we as humans, we're much more negative than we are positive. So when we're in this negative whirlwind of thinking, what's the best way to interrupt that?
Okay.
It seems to me that would be, you know,
okay.
I don't know NLP and I don't know neurosemantics, but what's the best way to interrupt that?
Okay.
To get back to where you want to be, which is about pleasure.
All right. So this afternoon we're going to look at stepping outside the matrix. And in NLP we call that a state interrupt or pattern interrupt. And the best one is these questions I keep throwing out. We call them ecology questions. I like to call them quality control questions. Anytime you ask a question, what you're feeling, what you're thinking right now, is that serving you well? To answer that question, you have to kind of step aside and say, no, not really. And then if I say, so you want to keep this, right? Not really. This really makes you more of the person you want to be. Not really. You ask those questions, and it invites a person to step to. That's how we get an exit from the matrix. In the movie The Matrix, they always say, "Tank, give me an exit." How we get our exit is by asking those quality control questions. And so it's that simple, and yet it's that profound. So this afternoon we're going to do that very thing so we can step aside. And if you know, it's just a matrix of frames. It's just a whirlwind of thinking. And you're more than your thoughts, and you're more than your emotions. You're more than your talk. You're more than your behavior. These are just expressions. They're not real anymore. They're functions. They're expressions. Then you can step aside from it and start making some choices. It puts us at choice point, because now we can choose. I'll take counsel of this. I've had enough of this. So we can ask that question. Have you had enough of that? Maybe you need 5 more years of that. Spend 5 more years in this kind of misery and pain, and then see me. And I'll charge you 10 times more.
What I'm sensing as I learn this matrix is, as I begin to think, I can create a temporary matrix, and it's accomplished what I want, and I go forward with my life. And then I interweave some of these conclusions, minor matrices, into a bigger matrix that I carry with me all the time. Mm-hmm. This is what I sense, is there's a dynamic going on here.
Right. So making matrices occurs every day. You're making new ones. Some of them will enter into the overall matrix, and some of them come in, and then we just go on from them. And so what we're going to talk about is that overall matrix and how it's built, and how to detect it, how to step out, how to step in, how to work with it. And the most important thing is recognizing it's all a construct. So when we say you were born in a matrix, when we say you walked into this room and you're in your matrix now, you're in your learning matrix. And this may be a good example of what, that kind of non-linearity. What's in the back of your mind about your learning experience right now? Because you may have an understanding frame, or a belief frame, or an expectation frame, or a decision frame. If I don't get it right now, I'll never get it. I've got to get it all now.
If
I miss one step. Or you may have another frame in the back of your mind that, I'll get it, I'll pick it up, it'll come. I can buy the tapes from Tom. This is where in metastates we say that the thought in your mind, the feeling in your body is not the most important thing. It's what's in the back of your mind. Because those are the frames, those are the metastates. Your first thought is just your first processing. But what's in the back? And what's behind that? And what's behind that? Because that sets the frame and that world matrix in which you live. And sometimes it was built up by an 8-year-old brain that set some frames, and everything else is just inside of it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's why we need to step aside to see maybe the whole thing just needs to be unloaded and a new learning matrix built up. So when we get to our application, we're going to talk about your health matrix, your writing matrix, your learning matrix, your wealth building matrix, your relationship matrix, just any matrix around any subject that's important to you. And what we're doing now is kind of a structural thing of just how does this work? And the most important thing is that this map is not the territory, and that it's a construct, and we've got the tools now to step in and out and design it and transform it so that it really serves you. Well, I see that it's time for our break, and so we're going to take a 15-minute break. Those of you who've been in trance, you can come out now. Somebody and to ask questions to explore the matrix. Before we do that, I want to open it up. What do you need to know to be able to ask questions about somebody so as to enter into their matrix and to explore it with them? If you know that each of these words are just synonyms for that experience, and if you want to find out how does that experience work and what does something mean to you or what do you believe about it, what are the questions, what are the things you need to know? The matrix is grounded in the state. So one of the first things I always do is to ask if we're working with an unresourceful state or if we're working with a resourceful state is what state are you in, or what state do you want to be in, or what state is not serving you well. So the matrix is grounded in what we call a state, a mind-body-motion state of energy. And a state is full of state of mind, state of emotion, state of body. So that gives us 3 ways into state. What's on your mind? What are you feeling? And what's the physiology, the neurology that you're experiencing today? What state are you in? Well, where does this state come from? What's the meanings in your mind, the beliefs, the understandings, the representations? What's going on there? And then what emotions are you embedding that inside of? So as we start with a state that grounds us there, so a state is always in response to something that creates a primary state. Because if the state is not about something out there, then it's a metastate. Because the state may be a state about the state we're in. I don't like the state I'm in. Or I'm afraid of the state I'm in. Or I'm thrilled with the state I'm in. Or I'm anticipating the potentials and the benefits of the state I'm in. So sometimes we take our thoughts and our feelings, and they're not about the world. They're about our experience itself. And so we can move up into the matrix in that way. As we move up into the matrix, we'll be asking the mental questions. What's on your mind, and where is your mind going with regard to this event that set this off, or one of the states that you're in with regard to that, so we can go explore that. Later on, we'll identify the 5 content matrices of the matrix, and the content matrices are about self, about power, about others, about time, and about the world. And these content matrices, we'll talk all about that later, are the things in the back of the mind, the content about self or about your resources or about others, the content that you carry with you that may be sabotaging what's going on. And so as we go explore that matrix, and there's a diagram, what is it, page 11? That has one of our we have quite a few diagrams of the matrix. Yeah, page 11 has the 3 process matrices and the 5 content. here's a difference between NLP and neurosemantics. In NLP, you've heard it said over and over, content doesn't count. Content doesn't count. Because we just deal with structure. What we've done in neurosemantics and what we've done in the matrix model is to say content does count at times, because if the content you build is I'm inadequate, I'll never learn this, I can't get this, other people are smarter than me, that content as a frame, and as a frame in the back of the mind that filters everything that comes in, that frame can discount so much. So the content does matter there. It's not just the structure of it. How do you picture that? Well, it's in color. We'll make it black and white. Well, I still now feel inadequate in black and white. So it's not a structural thing. It's the content itself. So we've got 5 content matrices, and these come from developmental psychology. We'll talk about that later. And we have 3 process matrices. The process of state, the process of meaning, and part of meaning is intention. And if I knew how to draw a double helix molecule that wraps around itself, I would draw meaning and intention as that double helix whirlwind of the mind. So what's your intent? That's a structural question. What are you trying to do? And we believe that we're always trying to do something of value and positive for us. And what's the meaning? What's the significance? What's the linguistic meaning or the representational meaning, or what's the meaning that you're given to it? And what state does it put you in? So we have 3 process matrices and 5 content that makes up the whole matrix model that we live in. Because I never leave home without a sense of myself. Everywhere I go, there I am. But it's not only me as a sentient, alive person, but it's me with all my beliefs about me, and my memories about me, and my frames and identifications. And I never leave home without a sense of what can I do or not do, my competencies, my confidence to do stuff. And so that's some of those content matrices that we'll go explore as we enter into a matrix to see how it is built up around something. So the exercise I'd like to do is on page 27, Matrix Detection and Transformation. Think of something that you would like to do, that you would like to be more effective at. What do you do or could do that you'd like to have more success and effectiveness at? Something along that line. And what I'm going to do is just to explore your matrix with you so as to influence that matrix. So who would like to be the first person up? Harrison. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to go. I know step 1, but I don't know where we're going to go for step 2 or 3 or 4. My basic process for myself is to follow Harrison's energy. And so in that sense, one of the wonderful things about this, I'm not running a pattern as much as exploring how his world works and really being invited in. So in this sense, this is where all the NLP stuff about pacing and respect and honoring a person really comes in, because I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just discovering and also holding his agenda, because it's his agenda that I want to support, not mine for him. And so that's how, so page 10 will be the questions I'll use, page 27 will be the pattern, the overall pattern. So where would you like to be more effective at, more successful? What would you like to improve in your life?
Doing homework for my acting class.
Okay, homework for acting class. Okay, describe that a little bit for me.
Okay, well,
what does that entail?
What it entails is I go to class at least once a week for 4 hours. And then the rest of the time, when I'm at home, I'm supposed to be doing imagination work, which is basically just, imagining the characters and the events and the people and the places in the story that pertain to my character and that I need to do, and just spending time with it and just visualizing different things, creating realities in my mind and creating a story so I know the person.
Okay.
And I right now I don't do it very often.
Okay.
And I'd like to do it more.
So there's a story that they've given to you?
Yeah. Well, a play or
a play,
or whatever.
And your task is just to imaginatively play with all those characters.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to do this class? How is it important to do this acting class?
Well, my major focus, my main goal is to work in film, to be an actor.
Okay.
So that gives me,
Okay.
the value. So it's incredibly important because if I don't do this homework, I won't progress in my craft and I won't be as effective.
Okay. So the first important is to progress in this craft and to move into film.
Yeah.
When you move into film, what's that going to do for you? Why do that?
That's, you were talking about sort of an indescribable calling or something that pulls you. You feel like you're supposed to be there, and that's mine, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is life destiny.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you believe about doing that homework?
I believe that I'm not proficient in it yet.
Okay. And proficient?
Proficient meaning, I get into it quickly, I get involved in it quickly, and then I begin to create memories clearly and be effective with it. And right now I sort of put it off, and then when I start, maybe I only do it for 15, 20 minutes instead of an hour.
Okay.
Or I just don't probe as deeply as I would like to.
Okay. Is there anything stopping you from probing?
Just myself.
And how do you do that?
It's tough to describe. It's just sort of avoidance, I guess. It's sort of like, I know I need to do this, but I think I also maybe set up, I have to do this. Like, I have an association with homework, being with school, being with, responsibility that I don't want to do. But
So what's your association? When you think homework, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
being force-fed information.
Okay. Okay. Now that put me off. Force-fed.
Yeah.
Are those words that you say?
Well,
I have to do this, or they're forcing me.
Yeah, I say, I got to do an hour of homework today. I have to do this before my scene on Tuesday, or I'm going to look like a fool on stage.
Okay. So when you say that, I have to do this, or I look like a fool, what state are you in? What state does that put you in?
Powerless, helpless. Makes me feel like, I don't have the ability to simply become interested and involved in something that I know that I would like to do.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Do what?
Do the homework and
the thing is,
fulfill it?
The homework seems like such a glamorous idea when you step back and look at it, and it's like, okay, I can be a really amazing actor if I do my imagination homework. And then I'm sitting in my apartment on my couch and going, 19th century Russia. Okay, I'm in love with this girl. And then it just doesn't seem as, it's never as glamorous as when you imagine it. It changes.
Okay.
And it's not the glamour that makes me want to do the homework, but it's so much more difficult to drive your own brain forward and to ask yourself questions that you maybe aren't willing to face, or to investigate something that you have a resistance to, like some sort of physical state or emotional state, or what the
Do you do better when someone asks you those questions, when
Yes.
someone facilitates that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when someone does that, then you can go there.
Mm-hmm.
Any resistance then?
I've embraced a lot of ideas that help me get around my resistance, but there's also, things that I'm not in control of, obviously, that I resist.
How well do you take instruction?
Very well.
Okay, so you can take someone else's instruction,
Mm-hmm.
think about Russia, 19th century, or can you take your own instruction?
Usually.
Usually. So what resource do you need? What resource would make it so that when you're doing the homework and you're thinking about that you could stay with it more than 15 minutes?
Well, I started reading The Spirit of NLP, and developing an internal propulsion system sounded like it would be effective for me.
So that there's something moved toward and something moved away from.
Right. And just having the impetus and the motivation in myself to do this regardless of my resistance to it.
Okay. How do you define your resistance?
The lack of action.
Okay, that's the result. What are you resisting inside that gets to that result of avoidance and ending it soon and procrastinating?
I think it's experiencing the emotions of
Oh,
of
okay.
the person. I think it's feeling.
So what does that mean to you when you feel the emotion of that actor?
What does that mean to me?
You know, what does that, well, let's say you get the emotion.
Usually it's a success, and I would you know, it might pull me out of the scene and have me observe myself and say, I did that well, I felt that, I started to cry, whatever.
So that's usually.
That's the result. You know, I'm surprised and contented with that. But as I'm trying to program this memory and this history into myself and sort of live it on stage in front of 30 people, then you know, it becomes vulnerable and opening and just sort of scary in an irrational way.
Okay. What does vulnerability mean to you? What does it mean when you're vulnerable to 30 people?
It means other people can see exactly what's going on with you, and it's just as though you're transparent.
So let's say that's true.
Then what?
Then what?
Then it's a fear of judgment and it's insecurities and things like that that prevent me from allowing myself to experience that.
Do you have permission for people to judge you?
Do I have permission
Yeah.
for other people to judge me?
If you go inside and say, I give myself permission when I'm doing this and getting into the role and acting this and feeling the emotion, feeling vulnerable. If someone doesn't like it, if someone thinks I'm doing a crappy job, do I have permission? I give myself permission to let them think what they want to think.
Intellectually, I totally understand that and think that's the way to go, but that's not what I do.
Okay, so go inside. Go inside and just say the words, I give myself permission to be judged when I feel vulnerable, and notice what's going on in the back. Does that settle, or is there some...
There's chatter, yeah.
Chatter, and what is that chatter?
It wants to rephrase it in a negative way, I guess. It's
Okay.
more, instead of I give myself permission to be judged, it's, you know, I don't give up what anyone else thinks.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay. What resource would you need so that if you're doing what you want to do, this passion that's calling you, and to step into acting, to step into film, and to really do this, and to step into those states where you're vulnerable with an emotion that you're giving to an audience, what resource would you need that you don't care what they actually think and feel, that they have the right to judge, and you have the right to get better, to get more skilled, to keep doing it, to not let that put you off? What resource would you need so that that chatter could go down and you could really have permission to move forward?
Well, I would have said giving myself permission, but I don't think that's necessarily the resource. So I don't know how to phrase what the resource is.
So if you go inside and say, I give myself permission, that in view of how important this is to me, in view of wanting to be in film, in wanting to step into different roles and to use my imagination, in view of how important that is and what I'm going to do with my life, I give myself that permission. How many times would you need to say that until it would settle more and more?
I'd have to find out.
Okay.
Probably several. You know, I'd have to create creating a new habit.
Okay.
30 times, whatever, do it every day over a month or something, and then just begin to... I have this interesting memory of a belief or a way that I saw the world when I was younger. When I was younger and I was training and I was, you know, and I started training in martial arts when I was 8, so you guys know. I felt like a normal, athletic, capable, competent person. And then as I got older, I gained some bulk, some muscle, and I was still doing things like jump kicks where I'm spinning in the air and flipping and things like that, and people would begin to tell me, people started saying, it's amazing that you can do that for how big of a guy you are. And I was used to be like, I'm not a big guy, what are you talking about? You know, I'm like normal, whatever, skinny. But then eventually I began to believe in that. And then I had troubles, then I started having troubles, you know, learning new levels of tricks and adding another twist and things like that, and I didn't allow myself to. So I have this, I know that based on how I see things, that's what makes it possible. Your mind makes it possible. So I'd like to reshape my beliefs about judgment and fear of you know, being judged.
What's the worst case scenario that's in the back of your mind, way in the back, about judgment if someone judges you?
It's a whole crowd of people laughing at how, you know, laughing at me, I guess.
And let's say that happened.
Yeah.
You know, because the people out in front politically, in every arena of life, anybody doing something is going to get mocked, laughed at. You know, it's not going to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you get to that level that you're really doing something and there is some judgment, and you can't please some people?
You know, that's part of what I'm working on now, is being able to be above it, not be affected by it, and have the power to know that it's their issue and it's their whatever, and it's not mine, like you were saying with.
So let's go inside and use those words. I give myself permission to be true to my passions and to this importance of working in film and stepping into that. I give myself that permission, knowing that I'm responsible to me and I have the right to fulfill the destiny I'm going toward, whether it pleases them or not. That my purpose is not to please everybody. My purpose is to be the best actor, the best person I can be in this particular role. How does that settle?
It seems a little weak.
Okay. So what would we need to do to make it stronger?
Rather than permission, the word power keeps coming to my mind.
And how would you phrase it? I empower myself?
I give myself, I
give myself the
power to be enough, to be correct, to be right in what I'm doing, to be entertaining, to be effective in moving other people.
Okay.
And I have that power. And see, that helps. That gives me a really good sense of me. It's that I have the power.
So go in there and say that again. I give myself the power to entertain, to be the best actor I want to be. I have that power.
Mm. That's good. I feel strong.
Okay. Okay. Now, with that in mind, how strong would you judge that from 0 to 10?
7, 8.
Okay. So as you say, I give myself the power to do this. I have that power. Now, with all of that in mind, just imagine a week from now, 2 weeks from now, when you have to do some homework. And you come from that place. I give myself the power to, I have this power. And then imagine doing that homework. How does that transform doing that homework?
Makes it more of an investigation and, you know, a process that's pleasurable rather than a chore.
Okay. Okay. Would it be difficult to do that homework then?
No.
Okay. It'd be a piece of cake to do that.
I could sit down and do a couple hours right now, actually.
Okay. Okay. So my guess is you'll forget all about this 2 weeks from now and you won't remember this.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I'm in sort of a snowball kind of situation right now where a lot of different sources that I've been learning from are sort of coming together, and I'm seeing a lot of, you know.
So how will you remember this? How will you remember this in a week from now or 2 weeks from now? How will you remember, you know, to be in this place, to be in this state, so that homework, you could do 2 hours of that?
How will I remember it?
Yeah.
Easily.
Okay. Is it in your body?
You mean what technique or what system will I use?
Yeah. Just thinking about it?
Well, it's, you know, that's a pretty fundamental thing for me, is to just be able to tell myself, I have the power to do this.
Okay.
And I think I can just simply come back to that statement and use it as a mantra or, you know, a motto for the time being.
Okay.
While I work on this.
Okay. Maybe you'll be too dangerous as an actor and you influence too many people. And also, I want to save you from all the criticism. So maybe I should take this away from you.
No, you can't.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Give him a hand. So, are you ready to go and do that with somebody? Got lost.
Michael, that a lot of us would need to do that on ourselves, to have that kind of dialogue with ourselves, maybe even before doing it with another person. How do you live it out first so that you're able to?
Actually, it seems to be almost the reverse of that. Actually, I find that when someone coaches me through it, and I go and they coach me through, so I play one role, I'm just the experiencer, I don't have to coach myself. But if Richard coached me through it, and then he did that a couple times, then it'd be easier for me to do it myself, because it's almost like I could hear his words. So actually, the self-coaching is actually a more advanced stage, and it seems to come afterwards. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to say that's interesting, the way that is, because that's the same with actors when they work on their scenes, is oftentimes you need a coach to ask you certain questions to get you to go to a place. Otherwise, you sort of jump to conclusions too quickly and accept those as fact.
So playing the role of just the experiencer, and then the role of coach, and what we're going to do is to give you the chance to play both roles, and then sometimes you'll play a meta role just to watch the process, and by stepping in and just cleanly doing one role at a time, then it's easier to apply back to self.
You calling me? I was going to say, now what is going to, I didn't get what your system is going to be. 3 weeks from now, you're sitting in the apartment, you get the TV on
the couch.
You say screw it. So what is going to be the...
Well, for me, the system, it's not so much of a system, it's just simply remembering that what I do in my mind is I have a downward spiral of BS that takes away my power.
Okay,
and
but
so
you don't need something... But it seems to
just
me
a
that
statement
you
to
would
tell myself that I have the power to do this, and remind myself that I totally do. Rather than being insecure because I feel insignificant and nothing, it's just empowering myself, and it's just a simple that statement. And that does it for me. That's not
So if we were to analyze a little bit about what Harrison offered us, my guess is there was a semantic frame about homework and the meanings he gave to that, being force-fed, and the significance of that, as well as once he got past that, then there was another frame, and that is the frame of vulnerability and the frame of judgment. And so just following that in, I just followed it in to see, well, what does this mean to you? What does that mean to you? What do you believe about that? And if you had that, let's go here. Where does that lead to? So just following it in until, and then I constantly asked him, what resource do you need to deal with that? There was a time when he was just talking about it. And so one of the things we do is to get a person to step in and experience. And so when he was talking to me about it, I said, go in and just say these words and notice what happens. And where does that go? So there's going to be those two facets constantly as we find out something and offer it back. And part of this is where the NLP background will really be useful. Calibrating, is the person just talking or are they experiencing? So the two ways to deal with any kind of information, you can talk about it or you can experience it. And sometimes it's difficult to tell if the person is just talking about it or if they're experiencing it. So you can ask them, what are you feeling right now? How are you breathing? What's going on in your neurology? Or what emotion are you in? How much are you in that state? And that helps to identify, are they experiencing or are they just talking about it? One of the things we know is that most of the time, talking about it won't make any change. You can almost count on that. Talking about it, you'll have to go to therapy for 700 sessions before the talking about it will make a difference. So that's why we want them to get into state, and that's why the state grounds everything, and the state is important in that sense.
There's obviously something he was saying to himself about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we come up with some good, empowering self-talk statements and understand what we're saying to ourselves about it.
Right.
About the meaning where Harrison, he created that for himself. So it appeared to me that you were trying to give him a little bit of coaching of what he could say to himself. He used the word of power.
Yeah. So I'm listening for what he's offering, especially in response to the question, what resource do you need? And as I invited him, try this words on, and he said, it's weak. Well, what would empower it? Well, if I use the word power, well, okay, So that's where one of my convictions is, and I believe this, I believe people will give me all the information that I need, that I don't need to know what they need before. And that probably, if I try to impose, there'll be that fight, there'll be that resistance, and that if I really listen, they'll give it to me. And so I'll just dance around until I find those words, and then invite the person to try that on. Since it's their psychologics that create that reality.
He also future-paced you, and he took you forward, and then he said you couldn't have it, and he said it's mine, so you reinforced it. So let's reinforce it one more time. You can't have it. This whole class says you can't do that homework.
Richard, I'm not going to hear it. I'm an Academy Award-winning actor, and you don't know.
Blah, blah, blah.
The emotional state he's in so beautiful.
Yeah.
See, the whole we're your resource now.
We're going to get about
I'll be your business manager.
Those of you who haven't been through APG, one of the things we do in APG is what Richard has just, again, illustrated. We do some provoking. And so I do it playfully, saying, you know, you be too dangerous with this, you can't have this, you'll forget it. So that the person on the inside is saying, it's mine, I'm keeping it, you can't take it away. And so instead of us giving it to them, they're fighting for it. And of course, when you fight for something, it becomes more yours. So the provoking is done in that way for that purpose, so that the person is running their own brain, rather than I did anything to them. So if you're new to APG or neurosemantics, that's a little piece that you probably won't see in NLP that we do on a pretty regular basis, getting a person to fight for it on the inside. Because if a person is on the inside fighting for it, then that future paces it in a number of ways. We'll talk more about that as we move on.
Yeah, the emotion of also fighting for it also helps to reinforce it, because the emotion is what gives power to the suggestion.
Yeah, exactly.
He really showed the emotion, too. All right, guys.
Okay.
That's just a hint. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
So what we're going to do is just to explore someplace you'd like to be more effective. Does everybody have some idea somewhere you'd like to be a little bit more effective? So what is that? So the first question you'll ask that person, what is that? What do you want? And you might need to say, well, say a little bit more about that. What does that mean to you? Or what's that about? What are you talking about? So this is where a little bit of that content is important to ground it. Well, when you think about that, what state are you in? What state do you need to be in? What state would be your preferred state? What does that mean to you? The first thing I did with Harrison was to ask, is that important? Is that valuable? What's your intent? Oh, that's your intent, to become effective as an actor, and your intent when you are in film is to move up into film. And what's your intent for that? What will that do for you? So we have a big, strong enough intention. So what does that mean to you? So what stops you? And then just listening for what stops you, what do you need, and then inviting them to put that together, try that on. Now, with every exercise that we do, the purpose is not to get an outcome. It is to learn the process. So if you don't get your outcome, or the person you're working with doesn't get the outcome, that's perfectly fine. We'll just keep coming back to it again and again. The first thing is really learning the process. So what I'd like to do is to let everybody do 10 minutes each. So this will be fairly quickly. 10 minutes each. We'll just switch partners back and forth on that, and just explore someplace you want to be more effective. Those of you brand new to NLP, let me make sure that you're with somebody who's been through Master Prac, so they can go first and you can get a good experience. Because when you get a good experience, then it'll be easier for you to do. So those of you who have Master Prac, if you'll raise your hand. And those of you who are new to NLP, look around and in just a minute, grab one of them. So we've got quite a few people with master practitioners, so they've got a lot of skill, so they'll do it right the first time. So those of you new, grab one of these people. We'll just do it in pairs. We've got some chairs in the back, and so 10 minutes each, and then we'll come back here.